Her hands trembled as she clutched the last few crumpled dollar bills, her heart pounding with the weight of what was at stake. 8-year-old Lily wasn't just selling lemonade. She was fighting for her life. But as rejection after rejection chipped away at her hope, a stranger stepped out of a black SUV. And in that moment, everything changed. Lily's fingers tightened around the crumpled dollar bills in her jar, her breath shallow as she glanced at the clock. The sun was setting, casting long shadows on the pavement, and she had barely made enough to cover a fraction of what they needed. Her mother had told her not to worry, that somehow things would work out. But she had heard the late-night phone calls, the desperate pleas with the hospital, the silence that followed when they said they couldn't delay the treatment any longer. Just as the weight of hopelessness settled on her shoulders, the sudden sound of screeching tires jolted her. A sleek black SUV pulled up beside her stand. The door opened, and a man stepped out, his towering frame almost intimidating. He wore a hoodie and sunglasses, his presence commanding yet oddly familiar. "How much for a cup?" His deep voice was calm, but there was something about the way he asked that made the air shift. Lily swallowed, suddenly aware of how small she felt. 50 cents, she murmured, then hesitated. "But you can pay whatever you want." The man reached into his pocket, pulling out a crisp $100 bill. He handed it to her before taking a sip of the lemonade. A small smile tugged at his lips. "Best lemonade I've ever had." And then, slowly, he removed his sunglasses. A sharp gasp escaped Lily's mother. People walking by stopped in their tracks. Lily blinked, her brain scrambling to process what her eyes were seeing. Travis Kelce, the NFL superstar, the man who had won championships, the player her mother cheered for every Sunday, was standing right in front of her. "I saw your story," he said, crouching to her level. "You're a fighter, aren't you?" Lily nodded, her throat tight. "I just want to help my mom." Kelsey's expression softened. Without hesitation, he pulled out a checkbook and scribbled something down. When he handed it to Lily's mother, her breath hitched. $10,000. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Travis, I can't." "You can," he said gently, "but we're not stopping here." He pulled out his phone. Within seconds, he posted about Lily's lemonade stand. And then, the world changed. The next morning, Lily's exhaustion clung to her like a heavy blanket, but she refused to let it show. She adjusted the bright yellow sign on her lemonade stand, the bold letters spelling out "Lemonade for my chemo," trembling slightly in the warm breeze. Her mother had tried to convince her to rest, but she had seen the overdue medical bills piling up, had overheard the desperate phone calls that always ended in silent tears. She couldn't stop now. "Lemonade! Fresh and cold!" she called, her voice straining against the indifference of the world passing her by. A businessman in a sharp suit walked past without even glancing at her. "No time, kid," he muttered, too busy tapping on his phone. A group of teenagers laughed as they strolled by. One of them smirked, nudging his friend. "Seriously? A lemonade stand? What year is it? 1995? Their laughter echoed long after they disappeared down the street. Lily's chest tightened, but she refused to let the tears fall. She gritted her teeth, gripping the plastic pitcher with determination. She had to keep going. A woman in a designer dress stopped momentarily, inspecting the sign before shaking her head. "I don't drink sugar," she scoffed before walking away. Lily's shoulders slumped. The sun was relentless, the heat pressing down on her like a weight, yet her jar of crumpled bills and loose change remained depressingly light. After 3 grueling days, she had barely scraped together $100, a fraction of the $10,000 needed for her treatment. She felt her energy fading, her legs shaky beneath her. Then, just as she was about to pack up for the day, she noticed a woman standing a few feet away, holding up her phone. The stranger was recording her, her face partially hidden behind oversized sunglasses. Lily's stomach clenched. Was she mocking her, just like the others? But the woman didn't laugh. She simply nodded, then turned and walked away. Lily didn't think much of it, until later that night, when her mother's phone buzzed with an alert. Her mom gasped, staring at the screen. "Oh my God, Lily, you're on the news." Lily's mother sat frozen, the glow of her phone illuminating the shock on her face. Lily leaned closer, her small fingers gripping the edge of the blanket. "What do you mean I'm on the news?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah's hands trembled as she tapped the screen. A video played, a short clip of Lily at her lemonade stand, her tiny voice calling out to passers-by, the fatigue evident in her pale face. A news anchor spoke over the footage, her tone filled with quiet admiration. An 8-year-old girl fighting leukemia is trying to raise money for her own chemotherapy. But despite her efforts, she still needs help. Lily's heart pounded. People were watching her story. But was it enough? Would it make a difference? The next morning, she set up her stand as usual, her hands unsteady as she poured the first cup of lemonade. The same uncertainty loomed over her. The news had shared her story, but donations weren't rolling in like she had hoped. She still had miles to go before reaching the amount she needed. Then, out of nowhere, a sleek black SUV pulled up in front of her stand. The window rolled down, revealing a man wearing dark sunglasses and a hoodie. His presence alone sent a ripple of curiosity through the few bystanders lingering nearby. "How much for a cup?" His voice was deep but kind, and something about it made Lily pause. 50 cents, she answered softly, gripping the pitcher. "But you can pay whatever you want." The man reached into his pocket, pulled out a $100 bill, and handed it to her. "I'll take one," he said, taking a sip before kneeling down to her eye level. His smile was warm, but there was something more, a glimmer of recognition in his eyes. "This is the best lemonade I've ever had," he murmured. Lily blinked. Something about him seemed familiar, but she couldn't place it. Then, as he pulled off his sunglasses, a collective gasp spread through the small crowd forming around them. Lily's mother staggered back, her hand covering her mouth in shock. It was Travis Kelce. Lily's mother felt her knees weaken as she clutched her chest, unable to comprehend what was unfolding before her. Travis Kelce, the NFL superstar, was standing at her daughter's lemonade stand, casually sipping a cup of lemonade as if this was an everyday occurrence. The crowd around them began to murmur, phones appearing in hands as people scrambled to capture the moment. "I saw your story," Kelce said, turning to Lily. His voice was warm but carried an unmistakable sincerity. "You're a fighter, aren't you?" Lily, still wide-eyed, nodded slowly. "I just want to help my mom. I don't want her to worry anymore. Kelce exhaled, his expression shifting into something softer, almost protective. Without another word, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a checkbook. Lily's mother sucked in a sharp breath, her hands beginning to shake. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice breaking. Kelce didn't answer immediately. He simply bent over the stand, scrawled something across the check, and then handed it to her. When Sarah saw the amount, the world around her blurred. $10,000. Lily gasped, her small hands flying to her mouth. Her mother's vision swam as she struggled to find words, her breath catching in her throat. "Travis, I can't accept this," she stammered. "You can," Kelce said firmly. "And you will." Tears slipped down Sarah's cheeks as she clutched the check to her chest, overcome with relief, with gratitude, with something she hadn't felt in months: hope. But before she could fully process what had happened, Kelce pulled out his phone. "Let's do one better," he said, tapping the screen before looking up at Lily with a grin. "How about we get the whole world involved?" Within seconds, he had posted about Lily's lemonade stand to his millions of followers. And that was when everything changed. Donations poured in: $50,000, $75,000, $100,000. As celebrities, athletes, and strangers around the world rallied behind Lily. Within hours, her story had gone viral. And suddenly, she wasn't just a little girl selling lemonade. She was a symbol of resilience, proving that even the smallest fighters can inspire the biggest hearts. Lily sat on the hospital bed, her tiny fingers tracing the bold signature scrawled across the football Travis Kelce had given her. The beeping of the monitors was steady, a reminder that she was still here, still fighting. Her mother sat beside her, holding her hand, eyes filled with something that had been missing for months: hope. "We did it, baby," Sarah whispered, squeezing Lily's hand gently. Lily smiled, her strength slowly returning. She was no longer just a little girl struggling to keep up with medical bills. She was the face of something bigger, a movement of kindness, of strangers coming together to fight for a child they had never met. The donations had skyrocketed, covering not only her treatments, but also helping other children battling cancer. News stations picked up the story, celebrities shared her journey, and messages poured in from around the world. People weren't just donating, they were inspired. Communities set up their own lemonade stands, raising funds for children in need. It wasn't just about Lily anymore. It was about every child who had ever felt alone in their fight. Months later, as she stood outside the same hospital where she had once feared for her future, Lily set up a brand new lemonade stand. But this time, the sign read, "Free lemonade, because you're never alone." One by one, children undergoing treatment came forward, sipping from cups filled with love, hope, and a reminder that miracles were real. And as the sun set behind them, Lily looked up at her mother and whispered, "This is what I was meant to do." Across the country, in a crowded stadium, Travis Kelce watched the news report, a proud smile crossing his face. "When life gives you lemons," he later said in an interview, "you fight back, and sometimes strangers turn into family." Lily had once been a little girl desperate to save her own life, but in the end, she had changed thousands of others, proving that the smallest voices can echo the loudest when people choose to listen. hit the like button, subscribe for more inspiring real-life stories. Let's continue to uplift, support, and stand together.